An immigrant group arrives, works hard, follows every rule, and outperforms everyone in school. 50 years later, they have the highest incomes but the least political power and cultural influence. The system rewarded their compliance, but the game was never about test scores. Forget the promise, follow the incentives. Let's find the strategy in the system. Chapter 1: The Rules of the Game. Let's start with the basic premise of any game. The rules determine the winner. When a country invites immigration, it presents a set of formal rules, laws about work, education, and citizenship. The implied promise is that following these rules leads to success, stability, and integration. For many groups, especially from East Asian backgrounds, this is the accepted playbook. The strategy is clear: prioritize academic excellence, secure high-skilled employment, avoid legal trouble, and build individual wealth. By every measurable metric of traditional success, this strategy works. They achieve higher median incomes and lower rates of crime and welfare dependency than the native population. But here's the first tension. A game where everyone who follows the rules wins isn't a stable game, it's a system that would collapse. Think of any competitive structure, a market, a sport, a political system. If the pathway to victory is perfectly linear and equally available to all players, the value of winning diminishes to zero. The system must have constraints, bottlenecks, and critically, different levels of play. The formal rules are only one layer. The second, unwritten layer is about demographics, political coalitions, and cultural capital, things not on the citizenship test. So we have a visible set of rules promising individual advancement and an invisible set of rules governing long-term group influence. The immediate incentive for a new arrival is to trust the visible rules. The system benefits enormously from this. It gets a highly productive, law-abiding, and economically contributive cohort without having to promise them a share of ultimate control. Their energy is channeled into productivity, not power building. This creates a puzzling outcome. A group can be number one in the metrics they were told matter, yet find themselves structurally locked out of the highest echelons of cultural and political sway. They won the race they trained for, only to discover the prize was somewhere else. Why does this happen? Because they optimized for the wrong scoreboard. But if following the official playbook is a strategic trap, what does winning actually look like? To see that, we need to look at the groups who are accused of not playing by the rules at all. Chapter 2: The Demographic Endgame. Now, let's examine a different approach. Consider other large immigrant or minority groups, such as Hispanic communities in the US or Muslim populations in Western Europe. The statistical profile is often different. On average, they may show lower educational attainment by traditional measures, lower median incomes, and higher utilization of social welfare systems. The mainstream narrative often frames this as failing to integrate or not playing the game correctly. But from a pure systems perspective, we have to ask, what is the actual game? If the game is long-term demographic survival and the accumulation of group political power, then their strategy is brutally logical. Their actions prioritize three things: cohesion, reproduction, and long-term patience. Cohesion is maintained through shared language, religion, and cultural institutions that resist assimilation. This ensures the group votes as a bloc, supports its own businesses, and retains a distinct identity. High birth rates are a powerful strategic asset in a democratic system where native populations are aging and shrinking. A younger population means future voters, future workers, and future cultural carriers. Utilizing social welfare systems isn't just an economic crutch in a coldly analytical sense, it's a resource transfer from the state funded by the productive, rule-following cohorts to support the demographic growth of another group. This is where game theory gets uncomfortable. The group that appears to be losing on the socio-economic spreadsheet in year 20 might be decisively winning the demographic game by year 50. Their energy isn't being channeled into the rules of individual economic optimization. Instead, it's being directed inward toward family and community building. They are playing a completely different game with a much longer time horizon. The projections are stark. By 2050, several European nations are projected to have Muslim populations comprising 10 to 30% of the total, populations that are significantly younger than the aging native base. In the United States, no single racial or ethnic group will constitute a majority, with Hispanic populations representing a large, young, and cohesive share. The question ceases to be about who has the best report card. The question becomes, who will have the numbers, the unity, and the collective will to shape the society? This reveals a shocking inversion. The failure to integrate economically can be the key to winning the demographic contest, but this leads to a brutal calculation for the individual. What are you supposed to do? Chapter 3: The Lose Calculation. This is the core of the immigrant's dilemma, and it's a personal, painful strategic problem. You, as an individual or a family, arrive in a new country. You are presented with two flawed strategic paths. Path A: play the official game. You dedicate your life to mastering the formal rules. You grind through school, climb the corporate ladder, minimize your footprint on state resources, and aim for individual prosperity. The system rewards you with a good salary and stability. But the cost is high. You assimilate, often diluting the cultural and religious ties that provide group cohesion. You have fewer children because raising them is expensive and time-consuming when you're optimizing for career. You become, in systems terms, a highly efficient but politically neutralized unit of economic production. Your group's long-term demographic and political power erodes even as your bank account grows. Path B: play the demographic game. You prioritize group identity, religious practice, and family size over individual socioeconomic ascent. You maintain linguistic and cultural separation. You may rely more on community support and state welfare to sustain a larger family. The cost here is also high. You accept lower individual economic status, higher rates of poverty, and marginalization from the mainstream economic elite. You trade personal prosperity today for potential group power tomorrow, a power your grandchildren might wield, but you will never see. For the individual, both paths involve a major sacrifice. One trades group power for personal comfort. The other trades personal comfort for potential future group power. The system, as currently constructed, makes it extraordinarily difficult to excel at both games simultaneously. The incentives are misaligned. The state's incentive is to get productive workers, Path A people. The long-term winning group strategy is to produce cohesive, growing populations, Path B people. This is why the East Asian model is so systemically fascinating. It represents a near-perfect capture by the Path A incentive structure. It delivers immense value to the host nation, but may mortgage the group's long-term positional standing. The individual wins, but the group's strategic position softens over generations. So, is this an inevitable, slow-rolling conquest? Is the outcome fixed? Not exactly. Because the host society isn't a passive board, it's a player that can change the rules. Chapter 4: Can the game be changed? When we talk about a rigged game, we assume the rules are static. But in democratic societies, the rules are the output of political pressure. The current immigration and integration model isn't a natural law. It's a policy choice built on specific, often unstated, assumptions. The key assumption is that economic utility and cultural assimilation are the primary goals, and that they are enough to ensure long-term stability. The game theory analysis blows a hole in that. It shows that you can maximize for economic utility via Path A immigrants and still lose the demographic and cultural long game. Conversely, you can import groups that prioritize demographics, Path B, and create severe near-term social and economic tensions. So what can a society do if it recognizes this dilemma? It has levers, but each has profound trade-offs. 1. Change the incentives for integration. This means making cultural and linguistic assimilation a non-negotiable requirement for the benefits of citizenship and severely limiting access to welfare for non-citizens. The trade-off? You risk losing the high-skilled Path A immigrants who have global options and may choose less demanding destinations. 2. Select for demographics. Explicitly favor immigrants who are young, skilled, and from cultures with low birth rates and high assimilation tendencies. The trade-off? This is politically sensitive, reduces overall numbers, and smacks of engineering a population. 3. Address native birth rates. The entire dilemma is amplified by sub-replacement fertility among native populations. Policies that make having children economically feasible for the existing middle class could change the demographic math. The trade-off? It's expensive and its effects are decades away. 4. Accept the inevitable and manage the transition. This is the path of least resistance, continuing current policies while hoping for a melting pot outcome that has never materialized in human history when group differences are strong. The trade-off? You cede agency over the long-term cultural character of the nation. The brutal truth is that there is no clean, painless solution. Every option involves sacrificing one value for another: economic growth versus cultural cohesion, individual liberty versus collective continuity, humanitarian intake versus strategic stability. Most societies are trying to have it all, which in systems terms means they are defaulting to option 4. This isn't about morality or right and wrong. It's about incompatible objectives. A system cannot simultaneously maximize for unlimited humanitarian intake, rapid economic growth based on high-skilled labor, and the preservation of a specific cultural and demographic continuity. The math doesn't work. The current rules pretend it does, creating the lose-lose dilemma for immigrants and a slow-rolling crisis for the host nation. This leaves us with a final, unsettling question that isn't about policy, but about you. Chapter 5: Your Strategic Move. The analysis doesn't give you an answer, it clarifies the board. You're likely living inside this game, whether you're a third-generation native or a first-generation immigrant. Your daily choices, who you marry, how many children you have, which community you invest in, what you prioritize, are micro moves in this long-term contest. The most important thing you can do is recognize which game you're actually playing. Are you optimizing for your lifetime tax return or for your lineage's standing in 212-4? The two require almost mutually exclusive strategies. The system thrives on your confusion, on getting you to work for its metrics while you forget to build your own. There is no neutral choice. To not choose is to choose, usually to default to the official game, to become the consummate player whose victory is purely personal and terminally brief. The real game never ends. The only question is whether you're feeding it or building something that outlasts it. What game have you been playing? If you want to follow more systems as they face these irreversible pressures, follow and subscribe.